started saying, now you are going to put the black baby out in the box, in the field, and you're going to nurse the white baby. Do you see that? The baby that was put out is now forcing them to nurse the baby. United Colors of Benetton, how many people saw that ad where they had the black woman, large black woman, big breasts, and the mouth of a white baby, ad that just recently came out. But beyond that, what do they call us over here? Mammy? How I love you, my dear old mammy. Pappy? Aunt Jemima? Uncle Ben? See, we're still feeding them. That image of the black person feeding them is still significant to them. So I'm saying we learn from this example, these barbarians that were produced having to be raised by this wolf. And so then we put our children out because not taking care of them under white supremacy that created the conditions. And then these children come back and what? War on the community. So we say, hey, white supremacy, we're going to get it straight. 30, 35, 2, 3. We can't get these people to have any babies at their early age. It's going to be hard for us to get them on these drugs. You can immunize a person to the use of alcohol, drugs, and sex obsession by putting them on a mature lap and not knocking them off prematurely. Imagine a little baby. Think about from the little baby's position. Little baby's 1 year old. And he's hardly getting it together, even that advanced nervous system, when the stomach starts knocking him off. And then he's 18 months old, standing, somebody saying, you're a big boy. He says, I'm a baby. Somebody pick me up. Do you all understand? See, don't feel bad. This is what white supremacy created. There are African cultures where you can't have a child closer than 2 years together. You'll be shamed because what? The little baby that doesn't get attention is not going to be as mature at 25 or 30 as it needs to be self-sufficient in the community. You see, but white supremacy put these conditions on us, and they've turned this thing completely upside down. But what? We're going to understand it because they can't fix it for us. Do you all understand? They cannot fix it. Send me to Germany, 1957. Because I said, I want to understand what happened over here. I want to live with these people, talk to them directly. Did you understand what you're going to your neighbors, found out nice white people? Francis, come and live at our house. But when I asked them about what they were doing to their neighbors, they would just look down at their shoes, meaning what? They knew what was happening, they allowed it to happen. So I learned that nice people will kill their neighbors under the right conditions. What were the right conditions? They kept saying their neighbors were Semites. And so I had trouble with that word. I'd look it up, and you'd say a Semite is somebody who speaks a Semitic language. Now, every child knows you don't define a word with the same word. So I said, uh-oh. So I kept looking at this word, Semite, Semite, and the brain computer said, semi is the Latin prefix for half. Semicircle, half circle. Semite, half black and half white. The population that was created in Africa by Greek and Roman soldiers coming into Africa, having sexual intercourse with African women, producing a mulatto population. Some of these people wanted to follow their fathers back up into Europe. Just like we say, I didn't leave nothing in Africa. I'm an American. European. That's like some of the people, you know, mixed. Well, if my mother's white, why do I have to call myself colored? Because you are. See, but the people didn't understand, so they went up and kept trying to integrate themselves and try to be accepted. And then having sex with white people to make the population get lighter and get rid of the woolly hair and get rid of the swarthy skin and blue eyes and blonde hair, if at all possible. And so that went on for a long time, and in the mid-19th century, they were integrated. The universities were opened up. Come out of the ghetto, everything is fine, we are really in. They started marrying European women, German women, and then Adolf Hitler came along. He said, enough of this. We have to be about white genetic survival. So he said, we're going to kill everything that we can find out that has African roots. So the gypsies were killed. Look in your dictionary, that word means out of Egypt. Translate, black. Semites, your genetic roots go back to Africa. Does everybody know where Israel is? Right hanging next door to Egypt? So Hitler said, I know that you're light. A lot of you have gotten very light. But I want to know what? Who your grandmother, great-grandmother. What about the black lady in Louisiana? She said, hey, I'm light enough, I'm going to change my classification. I don't see why I can pass for white. Why do I have to have this on my papers, black? So she went to court. This happened a few years ago. The judge said what? You cannot change your classification. What he didn't add was, how can we maintain white genetic survival and have all these changed classifications? You'll still be dragging some of that African genes. See, so that's what that dynamic was about. See, now some people in Israel can correct me, but I say that all that to do about bringing in the Ethiopian Jews into Israel was to be able to say, see, those are black and we're white. But see, the white supremacists right here are still saying what? We're going to kill blacks and Jews. Because they're not Aryan. Translate white. Do you understand? So I believe in learning from history. Learn from history. That's what that process was about. Just like that's the process that we're in. The same thing with apartheid. Is apartheid different? No. That's white supremacy. They say, well, 30 million blacks, 4 million whites, of course we can't have one man, one vote. See, now, a black lady from South Africa, I said, well, what would happen if all the regulations were changed, you know? What would happen? She said the black men would marry white women. Or vice versa. Okay? Like Mr. de Klerk's son went over there to England and found himself a black lady. Did you all know that? Yeah, read the papers, read the papers. Well, listen, I think, what time? 10:15. I I want people to be able to ask some questions. I wish we had on and on and on to talk, but if you have some questions you want to ask, we have some discussion from that, and then I will sign some books if people would like me to. Anybody have any comment or question? Yes, sir. I see a man over here. When will I be back? When I get an invitation. Okay. Okay. Yes, sir. Stand up. Okay. Why don't you come in? Where's the mic? Oh, right here? Is that it? No. Oh, there's a mic. There's a... Oh, but go ahead.
Yeah, what I would like to know is how do you associate the Chinese scheme of things or the Oriental scheme of things into this overall global racial picture?
Right, the gentleman asked, what is my opinion about the Chinese and the Oriental situation? They are classified as non-white people. They are genetically dominant to white-skinned people, and I say the same thing applies. They do not have the genetic power to cause white genetic annihilation the same degree that black people do. But I say that they fit into the equation, but just like when the Japanese went to South Africa, they were called honorary whites. You see, so any group of non-white people can be faked out to be pulled over on this side and used against the people on this side if they'll fall victim to it, but I say the same rules eventually will apply to them. Yeah, there are people in line over here. Yes.
Yes. Is this working? Oh, I wanted to know what was your opinion about the movie by Spike Lee,
Is there anything to come to San Diego and do this kind of speech instead of the one you did at the conference?
Yeah, that was...
No, I don't have an invitation, but I certainly would accept one. Okay.
Sure.
Dr. Welsing, I've seen you at Howard in 1970, the early 70s.
Yes.
And I wonder, based on what your realization through your research and your own understanding has been, what has happened at Howard? Because most people that are living out, trying to live out the realization of blackness are confronted with all kinds of barriers that make you want to just go inside a shell and leave because you don't have the backup. You're out there on your very, very own. And I see you as having been a vanguard in this entire movement, and I wonder from you, how have you handled it? What are you doing? What can you say to us about those of us that are coming along to follow a similar track?
We have to understand that we are in a war. Look at all the people who went courageously over to the Persian Gulf. Do you see, facing all kind of danger. And so we have to see ourselves as being willing to face the pressure, the stress, whatever, out of our self-respect. See, that's why I say embrace crystal black, so that you get all of that negativity about color out of your mind, because white supremacy controls everything. That's exactly what that means.
I understand, but what I'm also saying is that when you speak about the people that went to the Persian Gulf, for instance, we don't know to what extent the mentality was one truly of what you're speaking of, what we know, and what we've been brainwashed, socialized into feeling. Because there's always this process that's going on. And I understand what you're saying about the fear, okay, and confronting it, but I'm also saying that simply because someone went to Vietnam or went to the Persian Gulf or whatever, that does not typify or relate to courage or overcoming fear.
It's not the same thing as facing, but life is life. Do you see what I'm saying? When it's gone, it's gone. But what happened to us, having been taught to hate ourselves, then we wanted to align ourselves over here. on this side of the board. And so to oppose that, well, that doesn't quite seem right when really what I want to be is accepted over here. Our success was to be integrated. Our success was to be accepted, to say we're loved, to find a white mate, okay? Okay. And so it's just being able to turn that around and say, no, I'm going to love myself and find the courage to keep on stepping in the direction of justice. For example, I say the Semites of the Jewish religion, they do all the talk about never again, but they will not yet analyze white supremacy. Do you see what? Anxious to be accepted as white. Okay? So that means that what? The problem is still here. Okay?
Inspired by your talk, because I have 3 sons, and I want to be able to tell them exactly what is happening.
Dr. Welsing, I had your book at work and I was reading it, and I went out on a break, and this white girl picked it up, and she was checking it out, and then she asked me some questions on it, and so I went into your, the basic theory, and the albinism part, and she seemed to not, I wasn't able to answer all the questions about the albinism, and she was pushing more the theory of Africans migrating into Europe and nature compensating for itself, whereby in the cold the nose gets
In other words, it was the weather.
weather and no sun, and I mean,
Tell her to check out the Eskimos. In other words, see, we don't have to postulate way in the extreme, concoct some idea, because populations of color can produce albino mutants. It's as simple as that. And so we don't have to, and it's also clear that they would have to migrate north to get out of the sun. Okay? And those pinched noses, I would ask you to check out the noses of a lot of Ethiopians. See, we got all kind of noses in Africa. Broad ones in the west and narrow ones in the east. Okay?
I'd like to ask you is if you could please expound upon a point in theory that you brought up in a past lecture about George Orwell's 1984 and how you felt that the overall...
I don't even remember what I said about George Orwell.
You did, let me remind you. You had said...
Oh, wait a minute. They can't hear in the back. Is that mic actually on?
Can you hear me now?
Speak loud.
Okay. About George Orwell's book 1984, you in a past lecture had made the comment that you believe that that was the theory of that book, or the overall premise was centered around the last man in Europe.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe I really don't even remember what I might have seen. Is, for example, doing a lot of talk about his disappearance. That's why they have all kinds of fertility clinics, sperm banks. They are not reproducing at the rate that people of color are producing on the planet. Do you see? And so that whole mentality of concern about their disappearance, I just don't remember exactly what I said at that point. Okay, all right.
Mr. Louis Farrakhan.
Well, Mr. Farrakhan, Minister Louis Farrakhan is a victim of white supremacy in trying to help further the struggle to eliminate racism, as far as I know.
One of the ideas I have to do something called work is to push my ideas. At what point is it okay for a man to have sex with a woman? Is it okay if he just pushes ideas and doesn't make money as an independent because they did shock him and brain surgery on me, so I can't work? So at what point is it okay for a man to go out with a girl and be sexual if he isn't working or not working to the full extent what would be called being independent and making money and everything?
Ability for the product.
Dr.
Dr. Welsing, I'm a registered nurse, and I recently wrote to Sally Jesse Raphael after she had the Klan on, expounding some of your theories. Yeah, I got no response, but that's not surprising. What I would like you to answer for me is, what is your view on what happened on the Persian Gulf? Is that white supremacy? I mean, because they controlled the media coming out of that war. You know, they played Saddam Hussein to be such a villain with no opposition.
Can I ask everybody to please be quiet so I can hear?
So I want to know, you know, what was your feeling about what happened?
Well, I would say that those people in that area of the world are classified as non-white. That's how come there was all that discussion about kicking people's ass. Nobody ever said that about Hitler. We got to kick his ass. You see? That is dialogue specifically for people of color, and all you have to do is look at those people. The people in Iraq are the same color as a lot of people sitting in this audience.
I agree.
Okay.
That you made piqued my interest when you were making references to sports, and I was wondering where did you get those references as to the origin of these games such as golf and football as being sort of playing out what you were talking about.
Yes, sir.
Hello.
Yes.
Rich blacks and black middle class, do you feel they have an obligation, because most of them feel that they don't, to bring jobs into the community and help out the different situations and problems that we have? That is very educated, that moved out of the community, and that works with whites all the time, and live around whites the majority of the time because they can afford to live in a better place.
Well, let me say this, that whether a black person has an income of $100,000 a year or a welfare check, we are all victims of white supremacy, okay? Now, all the middle-income black people I know, 99.9% of them are working with other black people, okay? Now, white supremacy will say, we need to find another way to make them fight with each other. So we will run that whole thing about underclass and middle class. Class means power. See, don't forget, class doesn't mean income, it means power. There's no black person, irrespective of income, that can really protect themselves against white supremacy. And so when you start talking, the people who have the obligation to make things better for black people are the white supremacists, okay? And then if you say, well, I mean, you might aspire to having a higher income. Do you see, do you think that blacks with lower income should be angry with you because you have a higher income? You think so? No, right? So don't get caught in that trap. Black people who decide to contribute to the counter-racist effort will. Don't go to war with a black person who says, I'm not interested in that. Leave that black person alone. Pursue the struggle against white supremacy. But white supremacy thinks that it can depend on us to fight with each other. That's like First Baptists fight the Second Baptists. And the so-called Protestant blacks fight the Catholic blacks. Or in South Africa, the ANC, you fight with Buthelezzi's people. And white supremacy goes on forever. Okay?
For being here, and more importantly, just for being.
Thank you.
I'm primarily concerned with an aspect of what you were talking about that directly relates to relationships between men and women, black men and black women. Right. Being a young single black male, I'm concerned about the fact that we have this destruction in our relationship. Seems to me that, as you mentioned also, physically, the white man cannot really fight us entirely physically, because we're stronger than he is. So he has this economic system which causes this disparity in our relationship, this separation between our men and our women. I noticed you mentioned something about take a black man's employment away and you cause an argument in the family. And that's absolutely correct. I know this from personal experience. What I'm concerned about basically is the fact that when you mention this, the response would seem to be very subdued to me, as if a lot of us either didn't agree or didn't understand what you were saying. I
don't know. I didn't have that feeling, but go ahead and make your point.
Well, again, that is the point. I was really hoping that maybe you could elaborate on that point. The fact that the economic situation is set up in such a way as to cause disparity in our relationship.
Black male person. See, I think that, let's say if there was a massive internal movement with black male people, maximize the level of education, you know, in order to put oneself in a posture of self-sufficiency, white supremacy is trying to send the person in the other direction. Do you see? And don't feel that the black female has to understand you, just like if the black female made it her point that the black male has to understand me, as opposed to, wait a minute, I'm a victim of white supremacy, and as long as I'm a victim, my primary thrust has to be against white supremacy. That begins to take tension away from between the two people. But if they are not, you see, if you're focusing on, let's say, a female who doesn't understand, as opposed to approaching white supremacy, and in the process of your approaching that, you're running into some black female who's going in the same direction on your same road. Okay,
What I was really saying was that hopefully we both can get together and pursue the...
Hey, but wait, what if you can't find that black lady immediately? What are you supposed to do?
Well, obviously you continue to fight on your own, but hopefully we can...
No. You got to be willing to walk that road by yourself.
That's what I meant by fighting alone.
No. I mean, look. See, that's a nice exercise. See, if you're at home and you're real quiet and you envision one racist coming towards you and you're calmly getting over your fear and dealing with that. And when you master that, imagine two coming at you. You don't have any brothers. Nobody is there with you. You are facing them by yourself. And don't ever say, I can't do it by myself. White supremacy didn't say we are a tiny minority, so we cannot conquer the world. Do you see? So just say, hey, I'm intent. If I have to go by myself, I'm intent on this problem being solved, and I'm ready to walk on that road. The ladies will like you then. Okay, well, we're going to stop. The lady... Whoever's in line is the last question. We're going to hurry up and we can sign books and everybody can go home. Yes.
Okay, quick question. Do you see the reunification of Europe and the felling of the Berlin Wall as being a manifestation of the white powers that be scrambling for economic superiority in a world that they're losing it to people of color?
We'll be finished in just a little while. I would say that what they're doing is realizing the world of color and the people of color are making certain motions. White supremacy is still the dominant force. But they're just saying we're going to stop any of the squabbling that we're doing with each other so we can tighten up our relationship moving towards the non-white people. Yes. Okay.
White supremacy has a lot to do with nutrition too. As far as your diet, your liver, excuse me?
Let me just say this. Let me ask people to please be quiet again. But people pay attention to the amount of fast food that you are eating. Do you see that when we move, I mean, that whole thing of moving into the dependency, so all you are eating is food that has been prepared by somebody else. And they can strategically put things in the food that comes to particular areas. Do you see? And so I'm glad you made that point. You may be thinking about some other things, but that just triggered that response. Keep a pot on your stove and keep in mind how to cook for yourself. And you might have to be strategic to go and buy vegetables in areas where other people live. Do you see? Okay.
Thank you. One of our great, in my estimation, one of our great scholars, late great scholars, Dr. W.R.T, when talking about his theory of menticide, which he defines as the systematic and intentional destruction of a group's mind with the ultimate intent of annihilation of that group, he stated that one of the greatest pathologies from the perspective of a clinical psychologist was for a group of people, talking about us, to believe in something because we wish it to be so. And I was wondering, I tend to agree with that, and I was wondering if you could perhaps give us some simple solutions or things that we can do individually as well as collectively so we can go about, I guess, at a grassroots level, because every time we get together, no one brings forth the situation as well as you do, and in my estimation.
Racism, interested in overturning racism. Good point. You know, you really need a long time. You need about 5 hours where you've got a whole long time to talk, and then you can bring out more and more things. But these are some exercises that Mr. Neely Fuller talked about a long time ago that each individual person can do, where you're working on your own and you don't need anybody to help you. Stop gossiping about one another. Stop name calling. See, these are really hard exercises. They sound simple. Stop cursing one another. Stop squabbling with one another. Stop snitching on one another. Informing to the racists for reasons of personal gain. Stop being discourteous. Stop being disrespectful. Stop stealing from one another. Stop robbing one another. Stop fighting one another. Stop killing one another. And I've added, stop using and selling drugs to one another. Okay? But see, these are codifications that individual people can practice. What if we were codified in California and Los Angeles and stop killing each other? You see, where black people just know we don't kill each other. And so then that begins to take over white supremacy, putting guns in the hands of people, knowing that the level of self-hate is such that they will kill one another with those weapons. Okay, so stop killing one another. Stop throwing down trash where black children live, work, and play, where black people are. Everybody get a PhD in broom. Brush up all of the trash. Don't have any trash, broken bottles around yourself. The individual person just goes out with their broom. Stop making black children think that as children they can be adequate mothers and fathers. Stop pretending that white supremacy does not exist. Okay?
And I'm ready to face my fears now.
I can't hear you.
I said I'm ready to face my fears now.
Okay.
I'm ready to face it calmly. And my fear is this. I got one of your tapes about AIDS and the global white supremacy system. And you spoke about having all black men who have fear about this white supremacy thing. Mm-hmm. The conference. When are we going to have it? When are we going to have all black conference, man? When are we going to get together and unite and deal with this thing like it's supposed to be dealt with? That's the only question I got to ask.
But even more important than that, for the individual person to work with themselves. Do you see? Like, you can say, well, it would be nice to get together, but you're not upset with other people because you're doing the necessary work with yourself. Do you see what I'm saying? Because one person can do a tremendous amount. And so, say, well, it'd be nice if people come together and work on ideas and thinking, but you don't have to get upset with anybody because you can practice this Do you see what I'm saying? You can take it wherever it is that you want to go with it and share it with other people and develop further strength and further strength. And it's beautiful to be able to say I'm afraid is not weakness. Do you see? It's the beginning of real power. Okay.
Thank you for being here. Just as you say, buy fruit in other areas. I was thinking of I was rushing here and I pulled in front of some black women and they cursed me and told me she should whip my butt. Literally, I'll kick your ass because my babies are in here. Like, more respect for each other.
You're right. Okay.
That's all it takes. I followed that woman for 20 blocks. And they said, why are you following me? I said, you said you're going to kick my butt. I said, I'm sorry that I did pull in front of you. I'm going to college. I had to go see you. And I was in a hurry. I was wrong. I apologize for pulling in front of her. But we have to respect each other.
And so give yourself 1,000 gold stars.
Turn in the area of visualizing Jesus. I know that you made a comment about black people. Just imagine what could we do if we were to worship ourselves, or even to picture Jesus as being black. And I noticed that a lot of people use the book of Revelation, talking about his feet were, as fine brass, and his hair was as of wool. But if you do a careful exegesis or follow some hermeneutical principles on interpreting the scriptures, that does no justice to the scriptures at all, because his feet, being that they were like fine brass, meant that he came to judge, or he's coming to judge, because everything in the temple that was made of brass has something to do with the judgment of sin, not so much for the color of his skin. But at Biola University, I understand what you're saying. They put up a mural at Biola University. They painted a white Jesus right in the middle of campus. And the black people that matriculate there, they are actually furious about them putting up that mural. But I believe that it's just as wrong for black people to picture Jesus as being black, just as wrong as it is to picture him as being white. Because the Bible clearly tells us that we should not make any graven images of God. So I would just like to get your kickback.
Walls TV, America's
See, I would say, in other words, that's your view. I just said the dude came from that part of the world where the people had color. Simple as that. And when people are programmed, you see, this whole thing about color blindness and nobody has any color. I said if he was, and he was in that part of the world, do you see what I'm saying? He was colored.
Yeah.
Now, he doesn't have to. In other words, see, you don't have any argument with me. In other words, what is your number one problem?
Well,
white supremacy.
Well, yeah. But
right? My number one problem is what? White supremacy.
I understand what you're saying, but what I'm saying is that, if we were to visualize Jesus as being black for our own selves, do you think that we perhaps may fall into the same trap as the white people?
Well, wait a minute. The point is if, in other words, if somebody said your grandfather was, or they said, I don't know who my grandfather was black. So he was black. Why do I have to say he didn't have a color?
Okay, but if the Bible says make no graven images of him.
Yeah, but the point is, I don't know whether it was a him. The point is, if he was a human being, he had skin color, some color. You see, so he was either white or he was colored. Now, we're not going to make it a big deal, but the point is, if he was a human being,
North African
Africans as well as other Middle Eastern people are considered white.
Please. Go ahead with your question.
In this country, legally, North African people and other Middle Eastern people are considered white. What does that tactic mean, and where is it going?
Well, you see, and call that person Caucasian, but how will they relate to that person? Okay?
I agree. I think most people in this country, white and black, if you poll them and you say, well, do you think North Africans are white or black? They'll say that they're black people. So there's some kind of effort, some kind of...
Oh, yeah, there's going to be all kind of confusion. For example, I predict that black people are going to be asked at some point, do you want to reclassify? Anybody who wishes to reclassify their race can come down to the municipal building between 8:30 a.m. and 4 p.m. and change your classification. You see, so that people will move into turmoil, but white supremacy will still be practiced. Okay?
Everybody in the world has made God in their own image, and since everybody else has already done it, we have a right to do that too. Okay. I appreciate your comments about self-discipline. We don't hear enough of that amongst our people. I mean, statistics say that we go to movies at twice our rate in the population. We watch VCRs at twice our rate in the population. At some point, we have to have study in there, and I appreciate your comments on that. A long time ago, maybe 10 years ago, I heard a tape you said, you know, delay it. It won't fall off. It won't dry up. It'll stay there. And I appreciate that. And what you said about quietude, we need that. That's where we really get in touch with ourselves and find out who we are. But most of black households, I think we're pretty noisy. And I turn my TV off. The question I want you to speak to is TV's use in white racism in this country and what it's done to us.
Supremacy that by and large propagates white supremacy. Now you can monitor the television to learn about white supremacy. You see, or you can sit and look at Living Color and start laughing. You see, in other words, if black, and this message is to black men, in that attack under white supremacy, that black men must start thinking and saying, some black man picking in his nose. Do you understand what I'm saying? Picking in his nose and rubbing his genitals and scratching himself, that image is going all over the world. And that image is going on to reinforce when a black man steps up and says, I'm ready to be employed. The commentator says, this is the image that they say they are propagating about themselves. Do you understand what I'm saying? And we have to get off of that whole kick. Well, they're making money. I guarantee you that if a black man wanted to get on the television and start talking about counter-racism, do you see, talking in dignity, serious about himself or themselves, that would never be propagated. That would never be propagated, no matter how well written. So I'm just saying that that whole image thing is of critical importance. It doesn't mean get mad at those gentlemen, you see, but you can call the sponsors and say, we don't like that image of black men, and as long as that image is coming forward, we're certainly not going to bring it into our homes. And perhaps white supremacy needs that image in order to support itself, but we're not going to reinforce it and not going to look at it, because young people, younger people, little children are looking at that. If mother and father are laughing at that, giving endorsement.
How about a weaning off or some type of diminution of TV? For at least the period, because most of us are uncritical in our TV.
Well, you see, in other words, if we know we have to go to the library and read and get a lot of material that is not going to necessarily be presented in a formal school situation where you have to go dig out the information yourself, that doesn't always leave a lot of television time. Do you see? All right.
The first one is you give a brilliant socioeconomic, political analysis of white supremacy, which I agree with totally. I wanted you to expand upon a spiritual analysis. What is the spiritual significance of where Africans find themselves? And secondly, if you've seen the movie Jungle Fever, do you have any commentary on that?
Okay, I have it back to our chessboard diagram. That my concept of spirituality is respecting myself as a creation of the cosmos, okay, and respecting the force that produced me. And so that when I'm countering white supremacy, I believe that I'm being my highest spiritual self, okay? If I'm countering a force that is seeking to negate me, I'm expressing spirituality at its highest level, as opposed to taking spirituality off into the abstract. What? Okay. But you see, don't knock anybody's religion, okay? But if you say that you feel that way, white supremacy is the dominant religion. You see, so somebody says, I worship that, but they're forced to practice white supremacy. And so I say that when we get into respect of ourselves and oppose white supremacy, you know, but not telling anybody they shouldn't practice whatever they decide their religion should be. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.